Hello, everybody. I'm Tonya Davidson, the creator of the Jewelry Makers Guild and a fellow maker of 25 years. It's my quest to learn as much as I can, to try as many techniques and materials, and buy as many tools as I can, and to share that information with other artists. So I thought it would be fun to do a visual podcast to find out what inspires our fellow artists and makes their work so amazing. If you're watching this on YouTube, please smash the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any of the future podcasts. If you missed any of the previous 2020 or 2021 podcasts, you can watch them there as well. Please help me welcome to my podcast, Monica Cardone. Hi, Monica. I thought for sure I was going to mess up your name again. I'm like, because I want to make it so Italian. I want to add the E on the end, make it all fancy. But it would sound terrible.
That would be fine. Well, yeah. If I'm in Italy, I never have to tell people how to spell my name. So, in America and English, sometimes I do, but it's just Cardone. So
that's much easier. I wanted to do you made it sound really good though when you sent me the recording of how you would say in Italian. I was like, oh, I would have butchered that for sure.
All right.
So for those of you who don't know Monica, let me introduce her. She is a metalsmith and has been making jewelry for more than 15 years. Growing up with all the freedoms to be artistic, it wasn't until adulthood when the love for metals became clear while she was taking a metal fabrication class. Learning from expert metalsmiths in the USA, as well as studying classical old world techniques under a master goldsmith in Florence, yes, Italy, Monica's passion for combining the art of jewelry making and the art of Florence itself is evident as the founder of the Metalsmiths in Florence workshop. She has taught both domestically and abroad, and her work has been featured in Art Jewelry Magazine, Studios Magazine, the Travel Channel's TV show Treasure Hunters, the Rio Grande Rio Pro blog, and featured in San Diego's Voyager magazine, among other things. In the bottom right-hand corner of the screen below, hold on one second.
You're not broadcasting. Did you switch over to the...
Sorry, we have one little glitch here. Okay. And she was featured in San Diego's Voyager magazine, among other things. In the bottom right-hand corner of the screen below, you'll find Monica's website and social media pages. Be sure to check those out and follow her. I will also post in the comments after the podcast has concluded Monica's contact information, especially on info when she will be teaching and where, and hopefully that those workshops will be going soon in Florence, and we're going to find out. So thank you for joining me today, Monica. It's so great to have you here. As we talk, I'm going to be showing some slides of your work and what you're currently working on for our viewers. So if you'd like to add anything, just stop me and tell me about that piece or what's important to know about it. Please do that. And I love these podcasts. This is like a secret thing I've always wanted to do for years and years. I've been talking about it because I want to know what's behind the artists. What they were thinking when they decided to create this line, or how they like to work, or what they love about selling or not selling their work. And so I just thought, well, I'm going to do a podcast because I want to be able to talk to them and learn more about it. And the things that I have found out about all of my favorite artists have just blown me away because I didn't think about those things about them. So it's really been great. So let's dig in.
It's still on the waiting room. Could you click with the waiting room and back?
Yeah, we got a little glitch here.
Okay, I don't know what's going on. Is it still streaming?
Okay. Yes, it's still streaming.
It says this, you may have to start again.
Okay.
I don't know what happened.
So sorry about that. We're having some technical difficulties today. I don't know what it is, but... So for most of us, when we started down this creative path, there was a spark that made us want to start creating or be an artist. And I'm curious if you could share with us your earliest memory about making art.
That's a great question. And I was thinking about this just a few days ago. So somehow, some reason, I've always just been artistic, whether from growing up in Florida, I've always been near the beach. So whether it was playing in the sand, making sand sculptures of whatever it was, sea stars, mermaids, whatever, always doing that. And then my mom was really encouraging to me in making art, just drawing, paint crayons or pastels or whatever. she was always very encouraging to me in my art. So, and then the next memory I have of making, even just transitioning to jewelry was, I think maybe most people would remember the telephone wire. Back when we had landlines, like the telephone wire inside
the curly thing.
Yes, would have like these colorful wires. And I used to take that colorful wire and wrap it around like floral wire in these abstract shapes, and then like make earrings with them. So I don't know, it's just always been, along with painting and drawing and stuff, it's always been something part of me. And then making jewelry, it wasn't until I had my third child and she was 2 years old, I started taking a metal fabrication course in like an adult ed program in Santa Barbara. And I made my first ring, and it was like, I was like, ooh, I can use fire.
My favorite part.
I know, right? So that's kind of what started me on the journey. And that was way back. Let's see, Mia is like 2001, 2002. So yeah.
It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while.
But it goes by so fast. And then you think, oh my gosh, I've been doing this for, 15, 25 years, whatever it is. And and then I think, oh, well, how many do I have left? Like I start getting that hoarder mentality. Well, if I only have 10 or 15 more years to create, what are all the things I want to make, and how do I get it all done? So
yeah, my thing is more like I should be way better than I am.
No, it takes a long time to learn each technique and then to become fluent at it, and then to figure out how to put it all together with your voice. It really is a long journey, and you can't rush into it. And sometimes I think we can get distracted by wanting to learn this technique and that technique, which is, as a Gemini, one of my biggest problems. But but it's not, you don't have as long as you think you have. So you have to make the most of every day and every piece and enjoy it and love it and have a great time. And go ahead.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. We only get one turn on this earth. It's not, like making the most of it. I'm saying yes to a lot of things.
Yeah. And you should. That's great. That's, and that'll bring more growth anyway. So along those lines, my next question for you is that I love that we are a compilation of our experiences. And of course you have some really interesting ones with going to Europe so often, but whether they're good or bad experiences, just like this past year with, the virus, they're all part of our fabric, whether that's an ugly piece of fabric or our favorite pattern that makes our quilt and keeps us so warm and happy and toasty. So I think it's apropos for you and for your work to hear about the ebb and flow, because your work has a lot of sea glass. It's about the sea and the ocean, and your experiences, they play such an important part into that work. So can you tell us a little bit about who or what would represent those squares of fabric on your quilt, whether it's a person or a past mentor or a parent or a sibling? Who would have made that more significant and shows its inspiration in your work?
Wow, that's a really great question. And I think about it like that as well. Like you think about it like a quilt, I think about it like a tapestry, right? So everybody, whether a person comes in and out of your life for just a season of time, or a person that has a continuous thread through your life, and that continuous thread can be a golden thread of blessing and encouragement and loveliness, or it can be more of a like not so pretty thread, right? Like, and that ugly thread could have taught you a lot about yourself.
Yes.
So, but for me, sea glass. So sea glass is really a cool thing for me because it is something made by man, but then is refined by nature.
Wow.
Okay?
Yeah, so that's great.
Sea glass is something that gets discarded as a piece of trash, refuse, whatever. But over time and adversity becomes a beautiful jewel-like thing. And that's how I treat it. I treat it as a jewel, a gemstone, right? Created by nature. And over time, because it takes decades for a piece of sea glass to become smooth and what we would call jewelry quality with no sharp edges or chunky bits to it. But again, it takes time, and it's like us as humans. it takes time for us. We have to come up to against adversity to become more refined and beautiful in our souls and our spirits. So I feel like a person that's gone through life with no adversity doesn't really know at what depth they have to who they are or how they're created to be and what they can bring to this world. So for me, the analogy of sea glass is like, I want to be more like sea glass and soft and have rounded corners and not sharp edges to, you know.
I love that analogy. That is so perfect. It's yeah, and it's so yummy. It looks like gummy bears or something too. It's just there's very something alluring about it, or that sucks you in, seduces you, and you don't even know it's glass until the person tells you. It often looks like some kind of matte gemstone that has a story of its own, and it probably does have its own story.
And that's the romance of it as well. So some of the pieces of glass, every piece of sea glass has a history and a mystery to it, right? So some of the glass more common, like white, green, or brown. It comes from certain dinnerware, you know, types or bottles. What I like to call party glass, like brown beer bottles or wine bottles. But then you'll find a piece like what's on the screen now, like blue cobalt. That can have several different sources, and one of the sources can be old Noxzema jars.
Oh wow! Yeah.
Yeah, so that's not so elegant and romantic. But there's this color of sea glass that I can only find in the Mediterranean. And it's this beautiful teal, greenish blue. And it really comes from these old, huge, like wine bottle jars that's what I think it comes from. But I can only find it like in Spain or Italy or, you know, in that Mediterranean area. I was like, ooh, that's that delicious dark teal color. So and sea glass comes in all different colors. And
so my next question for you is, I think the best art is made by people who are driven by an underlying need to communicate or to leave their mark, or even to tell their stories. Like, I'm a big storyteller. Don't ever get me in a conversation, because I will tell a zillion stories and they'll go off in a zillion ways. So I think everyone who starts off making art maybe wants to make something pretty, but as you make your art, you realize you're communicating. Every single mark you put in a piece is a piece of communication. So what are you trying to communicate through your art? What's important to you that you would want the viewer to take away from your work?
That's a really great question as well. So not only along the lines of the sea glass analogy and the beauty of something that's been discarded or thought of as broken is really a beautiful thing, right? Yes. So we are defined by our brokenness. I think the places we are broken gets filled in with gold, and that makes us even more beautiful. So even the concept of the Japanese concept of Kinsugi.
Yes, I just thought of that when you were saying that.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much meaning to that. And like, there was a couple slides ago where you have like where I inlaid a little gold line in a sea stone.
Yes.
Right. So that sea stone's been tumbling around in the ocean for decades. Right. And then there's so much, I don't know, there's a lot to say about the whole line of gold. I've done, you know, reading the book, The Alchemist, or just that we possess these parts of ourselves that are considered to be gold. So it's a reminder to myself sometimes of like, you know, we have gold in us, and like, be careful about giving away your gold. Like we need to like honor our own gold and our own value instead of just giving it away to other people. It's like, value who you are and who you're created to be, and that is your expression and your given talents and attributes. So I don't know if that makes sense to you, but like, that's what I'm trying to convey in my art, is to just honor everybody's individuality, because every piece of sea glass or sea stone or whatever is an individual, one of a kind piece.
Yes. And so I was thinking while you were talking before and answering the last question about that beautiful teal color you said just comes from Spain or somewhere. So do you ever find yourself hoarding those pieces? Like the piece is never good enough for you to put in it. It reminds me of that Seinfeld episode where she had the sponges and they had discontinued the contraceptive sponges, and she was saying he's not sponge worthy. And I always have these diamonds and things, and I'm like, oh, it's not that diamond worthy. I'll have to put that in another piece. I'm going to save it for this piece.
Absolutely. There are pieces that I sometimes look at work that I made years ago and I was like, oh, I should have kept that separate. Like I should have not, that should have been mine. Like I should have kept that. For sure. Like there's pieces that are just, I will never set in a piece of jewelry just because they're, I know it seems weird that it's a piece of glass. People consider it trash, but if you're a sea glass collector, it's almost like an OCD habit. Once you start, you're just on a hunt forever for the perfect piece of sea glass.
Exactly. Now, did you answer me about who would make up your perfect quilt?
So as far as like mentors, I would have to say my jewelry mentor, Deb Jamot, who lives in San Diego. And she's not necessarily like a super well-known name, but she is a solid metalsmith. She organizes something called Idlewild Metals. Yeah, she's awesome. And she's been such a huge encouragement to me, not only in metalsmithing, but also in parenting. I mean, she's given me some great parenting advice over the years. I mean, she's very encouraging to me, and she's always just super supportive. And that's just her gift. Like she's a great teacher and super supportive.
I love that.
And then also I'd have to say, I mean, there's others like online that I kind of lurk and watch, like Andy Cooperman is like one of my like favorite, just for a sense of humor and sense of just wackiness. And he actually turned me on to a great museum in Florence that I had never heard of. It's kind of one of the lesser known museums called La Specola. And it's this natural history museum. It has these really fantastic reproductions, wax carvings of like human anatomy.
Oh, I went there. And he told me to go there too. Yeah, it was great.
Okay, great. So it's fascinating. And then I would have to say Giovanni is one of my the master of Florentine goldsmith that we work with in Florence. And he's really taught me more just about solid, basic metalsmithing techniques, like using your bench pin. This is how you file. This is how you solder. And just the tips and tricks that he gives after, he's got more than 50 years of experience in his brain. And I wish I could just like tap in and download into my brain, just please,
Yes.
Like he's seen it all. And he's one of the last remaining like 10 legitimate goldsmiths. I don't want to say legitimate, but like classically trained apprenticed goldsmiths in Florence. So that's kind of like so he's another part of my tapestry. And I'd say he's a gold thread in my tapestry.
Yeah,
for sure.
and when we were talking about the journey of being a metalsmith, it's amazing to me how the European way of apprenticing is many years. My grandfather apprenticed in shoemaking, and he was a shoemaker, and he spent 6 years apprenticing before he was an official shoemaker. And we don't do that anymore. We go to one class and we sell that piece of work after we take the class. And I think, wait, you're supposed to paint over that canvas and paint another painting and paint over that, just like the old painters did before you go sell that canvas. So I think sometimes we're too eager to rush out and monetize or capitalize on what we invested instead of realizing it's investing in ourselves, in our own R&D. So that's the whole apprenticing thing is really fascinating to me. And so it would be fun to learn from somebody who's been through that. I've taken a couple people who studied in Germany and who were there for their apprenticeships, and they teach very differently, and it's very thorough and it's old school and purist, but I appreciate that because you can take whatever you need from it and use it in your work. So yeah, it would be great to learn from him. Speaking of which, this piece that you have up on the screen now, is that Viking knit?
Yes, that's so over. Yeah, so over, I don't know, I shouldn't look behind myself, but so early on in the lockdown, if you will, during the pandemic, like last spring, there's a Facebook group going through the projects in this book, Alain Vier's professional jewelry making. And so the Viking knit was one of the first projects I did. And I made that bracelet that was in the slide previous with the cobalt blue. and I had some left over, and I was thinking, I don't want to waste this. What can I do with this? So I was like, oh, it's just long enough to make a ring shank. Let's,
Yes.
make something with that. So that's kind of where that idea started from. And then, then I tend to make things, I don't really draw things out. I don't know about other people, but I kind of my ideas come and I just go with it as I make it. I don't necessarily plan it out. And that sometimes comes around to bite me in the butt sometimes. I have to admit. I don't have a great plan sometimes. Sometimes it works great. And I'm like, oh, this is really great. But then other times I'm like, oh, that's ugly and I don't like it. So, but yeah, that's what this one was. I could have done a little bit more work, but yeah,
I love
like
it.
that one.
I think it's great. And those, the bands are so nice on your finger and your wrist. They just feel really good. They're kind of supple and I love them.
This moves a little bit. Yeah, it's nice. I like it.
So my next question for you is, a lot of artists get attached to their work and they have a hard time parting with it. So they either hold on to it or they get rid of it, but then they regret it later. And then there's the other type of artist who, for them, it's just about the journey. Like, can I make this? I have this idea. I want to work through it and see if I can do it without without having something melt down or fail or solder together. And then, so there's two different types, I think, of main artists. So what's more of a drive for you? Is it the journey or the outcome?
To be honest, I think it's a blend of both. Like, when you talk about that, the journey is, can I make, like, here's my idea. Can I make this? And what am I going to learn from it? Like, I've never done this technique before. The bezel setting, I can just like make a bezel in my sleeping kind of thing. But this hammer technique on this slide, or this sinus, this anticlastic form on this slide, like, can I do this? So that, and then I'm like, do I want to let this go? Do I not want to let this go? Had to see it go, or what does it mean to me? But I feel like I'm so thankful to have, so hi to everybody that's joining in, all my friends, metalsmithing friends or not. I have a group of like supportive patrons, if you will. And if something really sparks them and they're just like, my gosh, that really speaks to me, then I want to give that to them and let them have that, a part of that, because I feel like we have an energy as makers into every piece that we make.
Yes.
Like I've had people come to me and say, hey, they wanted sea glass engagement rings.
Oh,
and
wow.
I'm thinking, really? And they do, and they love it. Like, they value sea glass like I do. And sometimes I've had to turn people away, whether I was in a bad kind of energy or juju mood or whatever. I'm like, I'm not really in a happy place right now. I'm going to refrain from making that because I don't feel like I want to be in that place while I'm making it, I guess, if you will. So actually, there's a couple in Belgium right now that are waiting to get married. They had to postpone their wedding. They were going to get married last June, but they're postponing it to this year. I hope they get married this year. So with one of my engagement rings, which is
that's awesome. Yeah. I used to buy from a guy who's now since passed away. His name was Lou Zeldis, and I just loved his style and jewelry. But I watched one day, we were at his booth, and I was buying some stuff, and this woman put all these pieces out, and she wanted to buy them, and he said, no, I'm not selling those to you. And I just looked at him like, that is so weird. But he was very much about the energy of somebody and whether or not he would sell his work. And then I saw him later do it to another person, but he was like, well, you'll have to pick 2 of those. I won't sell you the whole pile. And it was such an eye-opener for me that there could be somebody who actually said no to a customer, or
right.
It took your, what you felt as an artist, giving away part of you to somebody else, that it was held more value than the dollar or than that sale.
Exactly. There's been certain seasons where like I'll do a whole production line, I'll do a bunch of something, and then that doesn't have as much, I'm happy to sell that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if it's sentimental, if it's something that I was just like one of, I'm like, oh, that's pretty special. So I want it to go to a special person that really wants it and is really going to love it and brings them joy every time they wear it. And that's what makes me the most happy when they say, I bought this ring from you 5 years ago and it makes me happy every time I put it on. I'm like, that's my goal.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's part of our gift that we give them. So yeah, I love that. So how did you come about falling in love with sea glass as your medium of choice? What was the spark for that?
Oh, look at that. So I grew up in Florida on the beach, and I was always a beach comber, if you will, always picking up shells and wet coral and whatnot. And it wasn't until, okay, so this is funny. It wasn't until I was on a surf trip in Baja, Mexico with my boyfriend when we were traveling around in a VW van back in the 1980s. And just saw these little green nuggets in between all these different rocks, you know, after surfing. And I was like, what are these little green things? And they were tiny bits of green sea glass. And I was fascinated by them. And that started like my little collection. And then for some years I lived in Massachusetts, and there's a lot of sea glass on the East Coast because
Really?
the history of shipping history and the industrial shipping lanes and everything. There's a lot of sea glass, a lot of historic sea glass over there, as well as like, oh, I could go on and tell you forever, and I would bore everybody to death on this. So Massachusetts, you know, sea glassing there, and then just collecting and collecting. And then it wasn't until I moved, my ex-husband and I moved to California, and there's, you know, coastal dumps. I mean, that sounds awful, but like coastal dumps, people used to dump their trash off the edge of cliff into the ocean to let the biodegradable stuff like into the ocean, but the glass would tumble for decades. So there's a place in Northern California called Fort Bragg.
Yes.
In years past. Yes, exactly. Yes. So, you know, years ago, I think it's been picked over a lot now, but years ago used to have variations of color like this, what you see in my hand, like, you know, reds, oranges, yellows are the most rare. And then you go down in line with the blues and the greens and the whites and everything. So it was just fascinating to me. I loved the frostiness of it and the shapes of them and just the organicness of it. It becomes an obsession, I have to admit. It does.
You were telling me before we started, which I thought was fascinating because I had never heard this, but that, you know, it takes decades for you for the earth and the sea to make this beautiful sea glass that's in perfect form. And you were telling me about fakes. So tell me again and tell our listeners about that process, how you can tell the difference and who started doing the fakes.
Yeah. So this has always been kind of a contentious matter in the sea glass industry. And there's an industry and also, you know, a lot of organizations that support sea glass. There's a North American Sea Glass Association, which was their initial purpose was to help people identify between fake and real sea glass. Because a lot of people, you could find things in Michael's art stores that, you know, they'll sell like a little bag of sea glass. Well, that's just glass that they've broken and tumbled in a tumbler for hours, days, whatever. But genuine sea glass has these specific markers on the surface. So the frosty surface, I'm getting really nerdy here.
I love it. I love nerdy stuff.
The frosty surface of the sea glass, and a lot of other sea glass enthusiasts love, is the frosty surface. And that's actually a very thin layer of lime, which is actually the element in the glass that keeps it impervious to liquid, right? Mm-hmm. So, but there's like little markers in that surface, and we call them C-shaped or moon markers, if you will. And that it really depends on the pH level of the water that it's in. So you can get sea glass, which is called beach glass, from lakes, like even Lake Erie and Lake Michigan. You can find sea glass there because there's a lot of wave action and again, but it depends on the pH level of the water that gives you those C shapes, as well as the sand that it's rubbing up against, rocks, all of that stuff. And nobody could really reproduce those until like recent years, where there's been people that have really cracked the code on how to produce this frosty surface with like those little C-shaped markers. And I'm pretty sure like there's been some companies from China that have figured it out. and figured out, I don't know, chemically, or I'm not really sure what the specifics are, but there's been some sellers on various internet sites where I'm kind of like, I can't tell if that's real or fake, you know, and I'm pretty experienced. And I'm like, I don't know, but all those colors, those are rare colors. And that would be really weird if they were all perfect like that. So it's an interesting thing. So I know that I only, you know, trust people that I know that picked it up by themselves.
Yes, like where you sourced it. It's interesting because I used to be a lamp bead worker, you know, make glass beads and do fusing projects. And this is soda lime glass probably, which is the lime. So I'm wondering, does borosilicate glass, does it have that same frostiness from being in the ocean, or would it have a different look to it, a more polished surface because it doesn't have that lime in it?
That's a great question. I don't know. I just know that the lime is the part that's being leached. The lime is being leached from the composition of the glass, and that's on that frosty layer. So
along those lines, we had a question from a member. Stephanie asked about Roman glass, and you and I discussed it before the call about how I think it was like 15 or 20 years ago, I stumbled upon a booth at the Tucson Gym Show that had Roman glass, and I thought, ooh, this is really cool. It's unusual, and I'm always buying unusual things to put in my work that I never use because I hoard it because it's like the sponge thing. So I have all this Roman glass, and I thought it was so special, and I probably paid a pretty penny for it. And then 2 or 3 years later, when it became really popular, was being featured in these art jewelry magazines and lapidary, it was everywhere. You could go to the gym show and just find strands and strands of it. And I thought, well, come on. They didn't unearth some archaeology dig and find all of these strands. So somebody is making this stuff, and you don't know what you're getting because there's no certificate of authenticity that comes with a strand of beads or with the pieces unless you're buying it, and it's probably that you're going to pay a high price for that. So Stephanie, I did ask Monica this question, and she said, go ahead, Monica. You said that
you could say the same thing. As kind of like, we don't know. It's like, how do you know? How do you know if you haven't done the research, or you don't know the purveyor that actually found it? Or I don't know. I think it's hard to tell. I mean, you would have to do your research, and I don't know.
So I know some sources of the fake stuff. I don't know any sources of the good stuff. So I'll post that if you want it, Stephanie. But anyway, so tell us a little bit about your adventures in Florence, Italy as part of the Metalsmiths in Florence program. I can't wait to hear about this.
Okay, this is like, I swear, this is the joy of my life, I have to say. And I've been super sad for 2020, like both. Usually, so Metalsmiths in Florence started in 2016, was our first experience. It's a week-long metalsmithing workshop. During that time, we stay in a frescoed palazzo from the 14th century. Yes, perfect. And during that week, we have 5 days of workshop. We go on a privately guided museum tour and a wine tasting tour.
Which museum?
It depends. I've switched around between the Uffizi and the Palazzo Pitti, because the Palazzo Pitti also has the Silver Museum in it.
Yes.
And has a lot of great like ornamentation, and I got to be honest, that museum needs like a redo.
Yes,
it needs to like game a little bit as far as like exhibits, but it has like fascinating work in it. And we also go on the wine tasting tour. But really the underpinning of the workshop is to work with gold and learn how to work with gold and get over the fear. Oh my gosh, I love this photo so much. There's Giovanni and Margherita, which is like my sister. She really is like a sister to me. It's so funny. So we are like the 3 that really organize the shop. So Margherita is the studio owner and translator for Giovanni, who doesn't speak any English, but
really?
I think he speaks more than he lets on. And he just brings like such life. He's like 75 years old. The dude is spry as all get out. So funny, so charming. And everybody leaves like just has a full crush. Man or woman leaves having a crush on him for sure. And like admittedly me too. So yeah. And so during the week, I mean, there's one lady in that shot who she's come back 5 times. She comes back every here. So, oh, and you see Richard Sally and Jim Sally in that shot. And they're actually slated to come back in the fall.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So what else? But we just live like locals, basically. I try to let everybody have their own experience. And if they want to, like I give them time to go see the Statue of David, which I think is also another thing that you must see when you're in Florence. But it's a pretty fun, amazing week. Like there's two other ladies in that shot that, are coming back in the fall. So super fun. Yeah.
It is an amazing place. And like you said, you have to see it. You have to go and stand underneath him and see him, because you see it in books, but it's nothing like seeing it in person. And we stayed in Airbnbs in all the cities that we went to, and it was great to meet the people who lived there and ran the Airbnb, and then also just to be immersed in what their apartments are like, or where they would stay and go down and get groceries at the local place. And it was fantastic, and I highly recommend it. Florence, you cannot have enough time when you go there, though. It's amazing.
I've spent a lot of time there, and I split my time between here and there, and I'm constantly surprised. And I love like going down the alleys and just finding new little nooks and crannies or new little places to go or people to see or whatever. I just find it fascinating, and it just never ends to surprise me. There's always something to discover about Florence.
And the gelato. You come back
and
fatter.
I have my favorite gelato. Right, but it's not well known. It's kind of far out, so not everybody's knows about it. But not my favorite gelato.
So tell me a little bit about what happens when you go to Italy to take the program. What would be some of the experiences? You did list those off, but are there other experiences? What kind of things would you be making in the studio?
So everything there's Catherine. So we basically start out making alloying gold, and a big torch out, we're supervised with Giovanni, and we make our project out of gold. So we make our ingot, then we roll it out to whatever we need. So last year we did this, setting faceted stones with gold. So depending on how Giovanni wants to work it, we make it with gold and learn how to just work with gold to get over the fear. Like that's the things, like I want people to kind of get over themselves with like, oh, it's too precious, it's too expensive. I melt it. Okay, so if you melt it, then you go remake another ingot and you roll it out again. And you still have the material. So it's like trying to get people over that, fear. So this next year, I think we're doing, I know we're doing a non-boxy box clasp. And then we're doing another week with the setting the faceted stones with gold sheet as well.
Oh, cool.
So hopefully those happen.
Yeah, people always wondered. Somebody posted the other day about, well, why would I want a rolling mill? And until you learn how to alloy your own work and roll it out and make your own tubing and all that, you don't really understand it. But once you do, there's some kind of amazing freedom that comes with having that knowledge and the ability to make your own basic materials, that in a pinch, if that tubing's not the right size, you can pull it down. If you mess up on a piece, you don't fret about it. You just melt it down and make a new piece of metal out of it. And then that takes away the fear of messing up or of working with gold. And when gold is actually the easiest thing, I think, to work in, it's freeing. It's exciting. And of course, this is an amazing place to take it from, and then to learn from somebody who's, been doing this for decades is such a gift. So
I totally agree with you. And that's what, I used to have, I'll turn them here, like my rolling mill is right here. I don't know if you can see that if I turn my camera. My rolling mill is right there. It's a Cavalin, whatever. I used to have a complete flat mill. And then I was like, I can't make wire. I can't roll my ingot if I want to make wire. And so I kind of figured, I found this one and then sold my other one. But you're right. And that's another thing that we learn in Florence as well, is that one of the biggest kicks I get is when we get there and the participants, they're claiming their benches and they put their tools out into their bench, and Margarita and Giovanni will just sit there and they'll just go, what do you have? Because us Americans, we have a tool for everything. Every specific thing we have a tool for. And they just they kind of look and they laugh a little bit. They're like, haha, you don't need all of that,
Yes,
you know? But then sometimes Margarita will like, ooh, I like that. Like, I like those standing sticks thing. Can you bring that to me next time, Monica? Can you, but the other thing, Margarita came and visited me in California one time some years ago. And I was showing her some of my bezel wire, my thinner bezel wire, which is like 26 gauge. And it came in a roll, right? From Rio Grande, the bezel just comes in a roll. And she goes, it comes like that? Like, well, yeah. She goes, I have to make all of mine. Like they make, they alloy their metal, they roll it out into sheet, they roll it out into wire, they make their own stuff. If they're going to make a half round wire ring band, they make their wire. Yes. They don't just get on the phone and order it. So it's funny. So it's like a combination of the different cultures and how, the Italians do it with very simple tools. You don't need all the tools to us who's like, oh, I want all the tools. Yeah. So it's kind of funny.
Some of us really like tools.
Oh, well, we do. I'm a tool whore for sure.
I wasn't going to say that, but that's pretty much. Oh, you said something about history and oh my gosh, it was with me and I thought that's your t-shirt slogan for Metalsmiths in Florence. It was like history and fabrication, or you had a little catchy saying. What did you say?
History and mystery?
Yes. Because the mystery of being in Florence and what you're going to learn and in the history you're going to get seems like the perfect t-shirt slogan.
All right, I will remember that. I'm going to write that down.
So let's talk about what's on your bench and what you've been making recently.
Okay, so that's pretty much the last thing I made was this challenge that you posted in the Jewelry Makers Guild Facebook page, which was about the sweat soldering, right? Different layers and all that. So this is what I just kind of came up with in my mind. And this was definitely a challenge. It was great. And there was not a lot of mistakes, some mistakes that I figured out and made it look halfway decent. So I was kind of stoked on this.
It looks really good and everyone loved it. And I didn't realize till afterwards that it's your logo, which is so perfect because it is this picture. It's that, which is one of the bridges. Is that the Gold Bridge?
Yeah, that's the Ponte Vecchio. And it's also my daughter. I'm sorry, I'm gonna totally so my daughter made the logo.
It's beautiful.
And yeah, so I was really stoked about the anvil on the bridge. Mm-hmm. But then I have to say, making the holes in that pin with the really thin saw blade, yeah, that was a challenge for sure.
Yeah. Piercing is a whole nother challenge. Maybe one of the ones we'll have come up as the
right? Oh, seriously, because there's a whole even Italian technique called, I'm gonna butcher the word if I try to say it, but it's about making those holes with your saw blade, and it looks like lace. When you look at it, it looks like lace, but it's like this angled, and you use your saw blade like a file.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Instead of saws, you use it like a file to get this angled. And I was trying to be super good at it in this piece, and it just didn't work. But it came out okay. From far away, look.
There's a guy who used to be a professor here locally in Tucson, and he's very famous. People always talk about him because he's quite the character, as they usually are. And he had us all do a project. This was just for basic metalsmithing semester, and we had to saw out, a pierced shape and form. And he didn't tell us that when we were done, we would have to put them on a slide projector, which would make them 8 feet tall in a dark room. So all of your fellow classmates would be judging how well you sanded out the inside and all of those edges, how perfect they were. Because when you do that and you make it huge, you can see every scary little thing, which is similar to when you first buy a microscope and you think your work looks good. And then you're like, what? How can I sell that or ever share that with anybody? But nobody's going to look at it 8 feet tall or under a microscope when they wear your work. So
we'll never buy a microscope.
You will when you get to be my age and your eyes go and you can't see anything.
They're already gone. I need to wear reading glasses with my optivisors. But like, it's a whole, I would love a microscope. And I'm like, ooh, that's so much detail.
It is.
I have a friend that he's a goldsmith in Minnesota, I think. His name's John, and his stuff looks pristine under a microscope.
I don't like those people.
Yeah, no, it's too good. It's too good.
So are these the not box clasps?
Yeah, so these I made I'm not even going to tell you the funny story. So I just made these, not even asking Giovanni if this is what we're going to do. So I made these based off the instructions from Alan Revere's book about making a box clasp. And I just kind of made them in my own style, like in a non-boxy way. And of course, Giovanni has a more higher level of making a box clasp. But so these are just examples of like what you could think about making how you want to design a box clasp. It doesn't have to be just this. It can be, how can we use a box clasp in many different ways?
It's beautiful. They're beautiful. Great examples.
Thanks. Thank you.
So this is a two-part question. I'm wondering what you do daily to prepare yourself for a creative day, and what your creative day, your best studio day would look like, and if you could check all the boxes of perfection.
Well, those ladies on my screen right there, they would be my studio assistants. So there's my social media manager, no, I'm just joking. These are my 3 daughters. So if I was going to prepare for a creative day, first coffee for sure. But I prepare by the night before. So if I'm going to plan on being in the studio, I have to think about it the night before and kind of go, what am I going to do tomorrow? Otherwise, I get super distracted by email or by laundry or whatever. I have to really focus and dedicate, like, okay, tomorrow I'm spending all day at the bench or the morning at the bench or whatever. And this is what I'm going to do. That's how I prepare. And then I get up and have my coffee and then go, okay, and turn on some great music and then just go to work. And then all of a sudden it's 5 o'clock and I'm like, oh, where'd the day go? So that's like one of my favorite days, is when I don't know that time is passing by and I'm starving. And I'm like, I haven't eaten since 8 o'clock in the morning.
I love those days. And I love when I don't like to make appointments in the afternoon, like for podcasts like this, because I'll get into that rhythm and that flow and forget and miss my appointment. I get in trouble. And so for this, I even had to set a timer or an alarm because I've been working on hinges all day and I was like having such a great day in the studio. Everything fit perfectly. Everything flowed perfectly. But this is great too. I love talking to other artists and seeing what inspires you. Like this beautiful, where is this at? Is this in California?
No, this is in Sicily. So this is one of, I know, gosh, I can't even, so after one of my workshop weeks, one of my girlfriends, Callie, like the one I said has come like 5 times. We went on a sea glass hunting trip to the Amalfi Coast. And then we went to this little island off of Sicily called Favignana. And I come from Florida where I'm boating and my friends would have sailboats, and I cannot tell you how fast I got down and jumped off this rock into the water. Like I was like, come on, we're going. I was just could not get into that water. That water is like, I want to see better than the Bahamas. I don't want to see better than the Bahamas, but oh my gosh, that's like my favorite color.
It
like
is beautiful.
Camper, yeah. So that's off of the closest.
So switching hats, as we artists have to do, how do you manage your business tasks such as marketing and packaging and shipping and sourcing and teaching, with also putting on these workshops, with also making work? Do you have like Monday, Wednesday, Friday you work in the studio, or do you just or do you work by emergencies? Like I have a deadline coming up, I have to do that, and then maybe I'll get studio time, or do you purposefully put in those tasks so they get done?
Thank you for asking that. And I would like to be the kind of person that had a more structured schedule of like, oh, Monday is my admin day, or Wednesday is my studio day, or I just fly by the seat of my pants, and whatever is feeling like I need to get done, that's how I do it. Like if I sell a piece of jewelry, then I know I need to ship that. Like that's going to take precedence, right? But if it's, right now I need to keep working on my new website that I'm building, and right now I'm actually, it was so funny because you're like, what's on your bench? I'm like, nothing's on my bench because I'm stopping to redo my tools, like to make sure my tools are clean and polished before they get rust on them. So I've been like the last few days, like totally dirty with my jewel tool, like taking off the, oxides and everything and polishing out my hammers and my, and a hot, like tomorrow or later this week, I'm going to have to lubricate my Fordham and do that whole thing. So right now I'm taking a break to, take care of my tools.
It's important.
Yeah. Otherwise I'm just flying by the seat of my pants.
It's funny because I ask every single person this, and I'm always hoping somebody's going to have the secret answer that I desperately want, because I'm more like the kind where you walk in and I just, whatever sets my world on fire is what I'm going to do today. And then I'm like, oh, I got to do that thing and I got to get that thing ready. And then no, the next day I just go back in my studio and do that. So
I think that's who we are as people. I think you and I are really similar in that. Not only are we like voracious learners, like we're always like wanting to learn something, but also like, I've got 20 different things going on and I'm gonna do that today, and then maybe that, and I'll go over here. Same for me. Yeah, I want to be more structured, but I'm just not. Everybody talks about scheduling your Facebook posts, your Instagram posts. I'm like, I can't. Don't someone do it for me.
Yes.
But yeah.
Yes.
It's funny.
So along those lines of business, artists seem to either love or hate selling their work. Like a lot of people cannot sell because they feel icky about it. They don't enjoy it. It's not something that they can embrace. How do you feel about selling, and what are your favorite methods? I know you said you have collectors and patrons who support you, but if you look back on your career, where did you find those patrons, and how has that worked out best for you? And how those connections have been made?
So for me, I started making work because I wanted to share. And so I did want to sell it. And one of the, fundamental things for me is like so for me, like people love sea glass and they love it's a big part of their lives. And they have a lot of, sentimental reasons around, they might have found sea glass walking along the beach with their grandparents or whatever. So for me, being in the sea glass community or the beach community, whatever, that's been really helpful finding that market, because it is kind of a niche market. Mm-hmm. But I've, over the years, I've found a wider niche of people that just like my designs. But so doing shows, like art shows, when those things were able to be happening, I would find a lot of people there, and they just, my jewelry is not for everybody. It's not everybody's taste or style, and that's okay. But it does resonate with some people, and those people, love my jewelry. And then Instagram and Facebook actually have been really good, reaching those people that, can't come to the shows that I show at. So using hashtags on Instagram, like I remember when you had Nicole, Ringgold, yeah, like her whole business is, or all her stuff is on Instagram, and Instagram has been amazing. I've found really great friends through Instagram, and a lot of other people that love my jewelry on Instagram. I think Instagram and social media have been great because it's able to get your work out into a wider audience, and all the strategies that people tell you to use about consistency and this and that and the other. I'm like, I'm trying, but I'm not great at it. So I'm just doing me over here, trying to do the best I can.
That's all you can do. You just keep beating the bushes, as they would say, hustling, seeing if it pulls somebody up and they connect with you, or they see you a second or third time and they're like, oh yeah, I remember seeing her. And you got to be everywhere doing everything and just put it out there. And it's hard. Like, even with the podcast, I'm a real homebody and I don't really like to be on camera, and I don't like to see myself or hear myself. So I can't watch these back. And it was really scary for me. No, it was scary for me to do this, to put myself out there, because it would have been much easier if I could just call somebody and talk to them and record that. But that would be boring. It would just be like another podcast. And I wanted it to see visuals and meet the artist and get to know the artist and have that connection. So I had to just get over it, you got to
exactly. I think we have to get over ourselves. With me, like, I don't want to put my face out there. I don't want to make videos of myself. It takes me too long because I'm too critical, whatever. And I just have to get over it. And I'm like, who cares? And let's just do it. Like, just because, come on, again, we're only here like this one time.
Yeah.
Like,
that's exactly it. And I'm a perfectionist too, so then I was like, well, it has to be perfect. I have to say the perfect thing, and there can't be any technical glitches like today. And then I realized they just want to see you for who you are. They just want to experience you as you. They don't want you to be polished or, perfect in any way. Just, be yourself. So
I totally agree with that. When I walk into a friend's house and their house is completely perfect, like model home, I'm like, I can't relate to you because you're gonna walk to my house and you're gonna see like shoes here and a dirty laundry there. Like that's just how people live. I feel like I can connect with people when things are like a little bit askew, I guess, because they're not perfect and polished. And so for me, that's I don't know. I'd rather things not be perfect and polished. Maybe that's why I like sea glass, because it's not perfect and polished.
Yeah, it's perfect for that. So
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about your studio. I see you have an oxygen
Concentrator.
I want to say generator. I'm like, that's not the right word.
Well, I think both. I mean, it's a generator. It generates oxygen, but it's an oxygen concentrator because this is in my apartment.
Oh.
And I didn't want big. I used to have my studio in a 2-car garage, but I downsized. And so this is what I literally have 10 feet by 2 feet. I have 20 square feet of studio space. So this literally is like, you see my rolling mill there and the thing, it goes from wall to wall. It's 10 feet. So that's an oxygen concentrator. And so that's a safer way than me having like big oxygen tanks or a set of tanks in my apartment.
And much easier.
Look, yeah, it is actually noisier, a bit easier.
I love how everything is very organized. That's the kind of place I could thrive in. I don't thrive in chaos.
Right. Everything like so you see my rolling mill on the left, then you see my little forming station right there. I've got my bracelet mandrels hanging off the side. I've got all my other little doodads and what over there. So every little inch of space is.
We have the same bench too.
Do we?
Yes, I love the small bench. Even though it's like the cheap bench and it's not the $4,000 bench, I figured I could buy a whole lot of tools for $4,000. So I just bought the cheap bench.
Like and this was actually like there was a goldsmith she majored more in enameling, Nancy Monkman. She passed away a while ago and she had an estate sale and this was her bench and her chair. And I was just thinking, there's some good juju in that. Like I want that, right? Like creative juju in that. And then also, I mean, what I work with in Florence, I'm literally, if I can't rent a bench in a studio in Florence, I'm at the end of my dining room table with a bench pen C clamped to my table and cake pans of tools in front of me, right? And what do I have for my catch tray? I have a lame like cookie sheet laying on my lap. So like it doesn't, so I'm the poster child for small, simple studios.
I love that. That's not me.
Of course, we all love a big studio.
But I love that. So let's do your top 10. This is my favorite part, I think, because I'm such a tool junkie. I love seeing what people pick as their top 10 favorite tools because I find it fascinating why they chose that one item as a tool. So this is your number 10. So it's like David Letterman. We work from 10 down to 1. 10, and how do you say this? It's a burnisher, but how do you say it? Rashino?
It's called good try. How do you say? So this is what, so funny. So you would say English speaking people would say Rashino, but in Italian it's called Raschino.
Oh, geez.
No, I know. So the H makes a hard sound. Like if you add an H in that mix, it makes it a hard sound. So how do you say bruschetta? Do you say bruschetta or bruschetta?
I say it however badly it needs to be said.
So I'm gonna tell everybody it's bruschetta. It's not bruschetta. But anyway, so so this tool I love, and a lot of people that come to Metalsmiths in Florence are enthralled with this tool. It's not like a uncommon tool. A lot of goldsmiths or metalsmiths will have this tool. It's basically a triangle scraper, right, on one end, and then just a little burnisher on the other end, right? But what we learn, one of the things that I've learned from Giovanni is that like they scrape their metal with this, right? Like we will scrape our solder and our metal with this. So when we solder it together, it's pure metal being soldered together. Because a lot of people, and I do too, I'll sand it. Like I'll sand it to get my metal clean for a good solder joint. But Giovanni tells me that sometimes there can be a residue left from the sandpaper that might impede a good solid solder joint. You don't wash it really well. So like after sanding, you should wash it. If you're a sander to clean your metal, then just wash it to get that away. Or this really, like you scrape, I'll scrape the solder with this. I'll scrape my metal with this to get a good, I guess a good more, you know, bond solder joint. Yeah.
I love that. Always good things to think about when you're using a tool, why you need to use it and what purpose it serves. And then if you have an issue, you kind of know, okay, maybe I forgot that step.
Yeah. So I was really, that was a fun thing that I learned on that one. And then this part, the burnisher part, I feel like it's not like very good. Like you can't torque it in your hand very well, but I feel like it's really good for like really fine detail parts that you need to burnish or.
That would be an awesome burnisher for kombu.
Yes. Which is another technique I'm getting ready to do some more of. Oh,
so fun because it's got the tiny end that will get into crevices and push things down, but it's the right shape for getting in and burnishing. So that'd be a really nice one for that. Okay. So your number 9 is your flex bottle, and I'm curious about this. How do you use this for your flex bottle?
Okay, so this flux bottle is this is normal for the people in Italy in the workshop. It's at every station. So the flux bottle has, you fill it up with flux, but then you screw off the top and it has another little lid that's tucked down into the top of that, where you take it out and you pour a little bit of flux in that, and then you put it back in so that if your flux bottle happens to fall over, you don't lose the whole bottle. You just lose the little part and then it doesn't dry out as fast, right? So it doesn't evaporate as fast. So that's kind of the fun part of that not a lot of people here. I don't know. I've never seen it here, but I'm sure you can buy them somewhere. It's just something that all the participants, when I take them to the tool store at the end of the week, which is always the fun surprise for them, they always want one of these.
Well, now that we're all hoarding our fluxes because they weren't made last year and nobody has them anymore, you're going to start thinking about evaporation more than you used to before.
Yeah.
So your number 8 is your Lindstrom cutters. I use those for cutting sheet or wire, or because I don't have those. I have the other ones, like the yellow ones, yellow handle ones, which I love. But
those. Okay, yeah, I have those too. These, I cut everything with these. These have a lot of torque and strength in them. So there's those were actually gifted to me by my friend Deb Jamot. I was assisting her in a Idlewild class actually back years ago. She gifted those to me, and I cut like 18 gauge, 20 gauge.
So they're kind of like an alternative to Joyce Chen shears, maybe, or
yes.
I use bonsai shears, and I love those.
I use bonsai shear too. I actually like those better than the Joyce Chen.
Yes, me too.
Yeah, but these, they just have a lot of torque and a lot of power, and they're quick, and they give a really nice line too. Like when you cut it, it's a straight line. It's not like a pinch line.
Yeah, they look fine pointed, which I like. So your number 7 are these sanding sticks.
Love these. So these can get into teeny tiny crevices, and these are the standing sticks that Margherita in Italy loves. She loves these things. And so you can get them in the different grits, and then those little sticks kind of have like a little, they can collapse a little bit to take off the bands of sandpaper. So you can replace them really fast, but then you just rotate the sandpaper around the sticks to get a fresh part of the grit. And they can get into, that's actually what I used on that brooch pin that I made for your challenge on the Jewelry Makers Guild page. Because some of the solder from the underside, when I soldered it on, leaked into the front. And I was like, oh, how am I going to get that off? So I had to get those little standing sticks in there and sand it out. Also with a graver, but I use the standing sticks for.
I love that when you figure out a tool that's like, oh yeah, I have that and it will work for this. And you're like, yes.
Exactly. Right. Otherwise, I don't know how. Nothing else would have fit in that little corner.
Your number 6 is the scribe, and I have one that's just like that. Did you get that from Dave Tarver?
Did not. Okay, so there's a metalsmithing guild here in Southern California called the Metal Arts Society of Southern California. And they have a holiday party every year. And this is one of the little things that was in the swag bag.
Nice.
And I know. And I want to make these. I want to make more of these. These are just made out of like masonry nails.
Right.
Masonry nails. I have a box of them over there that I need to make some with. But
you can also use horseshoe nails because they're square
Oh,
heads. So go to your veterinary supply place and pick up a box. They're probably cheaper than the masonry place.
Right. And so I also wanted to practice, the hardening and annealing and the tempering and all that stuff. So that's one of my future projects for sure.
Sounds like fun. I'll expect one for my Christmas gift or something. I can see you just making these all year long, having a whole stack.
Now I'm in the business of making scribes for metalsmiths.
So your number 5 is your Pepe disc cutter, and I love this. And you were talking about rolling mills, and I just got Pepe's the wire rolling mill that's got all the 8 different kinds of wire that you can make. You can make the triangle, the oval, and I'm just so enamored with it, and I have to get busy using it. He just came out with it. It's brand new. It's a new rolling mill for him, and it's like the last thing I really needed in life was a wire, but I'm going to be teaching a class on chains. So making all different kinds of wire in different shapes and sizes and being able to do that without having to pay the fabrication cost to get those made. But they make really great tools.
They really are. And I have to say, like, I schlepped one of these things to Italy because Margaret wanted one. She's like, I want this. And I'm like, why can't you buy that here? Yeah. So yeah, no, I schlepped one of those things, and it was funny because at the Rome airport, like the lady, she x-rayed my bag or something, and so you see this big black disc in the x-ray. She's like, what do you have in here? And I'm like, it's a tool for making jewelry. I'm just like, no, it was funny.
And they don't weigh like 5 ounces. Those things are
No,
heavy.
they're super heavy. Yeah.
So your number 4.
But they love it.
Yeah, it's a great tool. I bet they do love having one of those over there so they don't have to cut circles. There's nothing worse than cutting out a circle, I don't think. Your number 4 is your Fordham hammer handpiece.
Yes. So this actually helped me a lot because I have to admit, like I was doing production on a bunch of bezel set rings, and I got tendonitis in my arm. And so I think it was because I wasn't doing really stretching, taking breaks, stretching or whatever in my arm and my hands. And so I was like, ooh, this helps a lot. So that this does more of the work than what my hands would trying to. Also, I've gotten into thicker bezels recently, and I'm actually teaching a class in June about what I call badass bezels with the Fordham hammer handpiece. So yeah, now my bezels most of the time are more like 18 gauge, 1 millimeter bezels.
Yeah.
I really like that look a lot better, like a thicker, more solid bezel.
Yeah.
So yeah, but that's a lot of the work, and I like it a lot.
I love any tool that makes my job easier.
Exactly. So not only for texturing, but also for like setting bezels and stone setting and all that stuff. It's good. It's a good one.
It's a great tool. Your number 3 is your GRS Benchmate.
Yes. So like what I was saying, like when that man passed away, she also had a lot of her tools, and this woman was like you. She had like every tool, and it was awesome. So not only did I score the bench, but she also had her bench mate. So I got the bench pin and then the ring setting, the ring clamp.
Yes.
So I don't have all the other accessories. I don't have like the inside ring clamp thing. But yeah,
I never use it. I have the inside ring setter, and then I had another one that goes in a vise, and I honestly hardly ever use it. So I don't know that you need it unless you are going to do a lot of that kind of thing. But this tool is worth every penny.
Right. Like if you're doing a lot of mill grain work or like engraving on the outside of a ring band, yeah, for sure. But if you're not, then that part might be unnecessary.
Yes. But really, you got a good score out of her.
I know.
Yeah.
Totally.
I love
Totally
that.
did. Yeah.
So your number 2 is your Little Smith torch, and you use the disposable tanks?
I do. So I use just like one of those little green propane tanks that you'd use for like a Coleman stove when you're camping.
Yes.
And that works great. It works great and it lasts a long time, surprisingly. This torch, I think it takes getting a little used to, because I was using a Smith torch, like a silversmith torch, the Smith silver, whatever you call it.
Acetylene torch.
There you go. And that's just like a one kind of flame. You change your tips, but it's one flame. This, it's got the two, it's got the oxygen and the gas. And so you have to like figure out your flame, which is great. And I love it. It's super hot, super fast, and works really good with gold and silver. It just, you got to kind of go, oh, this one's hot.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and you can take it with you.
Yeah, totally could.
And your number 1 favorite tool is your green lion saw.
It is. I just have to admit, like, I just like how it looks. Like, yes, aesthetically, yeah, right? Like, I don't know, you can see mine hanging up on my bench. So aesthetically, I love how it looks, and I like the way it feels in my hand.
Yes.
Like, I like it. It's simple, easy, beautiful. I've seen some people get them like engraved. Have you seen those?
That's one of my students got hers engraved by Sandy Sturgeon, and I was so jealous.
Right?
Yeah, I should engrave it, but I'm like, no, I'm not going to spend all that time engraving. It's a lot of work.
I know.
I love it because it's so easy to get the right tension and to load it. But sometimes it's not deep enough here. And so I use my new saw, KNEW saw, new concept saw, for when I have something deeper. That would be I wish they made another one that was just a little bit bigger. But then there's also, have you tried the Pepe one, the new one?
I haven't tried that one yet, but also I wanted to ask you about those Nano Blades. Do you think there's a big difference? I've heard that they're like, these blades are awesome.
They're very good, and they even sell these cute little things that keep each one, but then you can get the extra, your reload. I do really like them. It's I just got them a couple months ago and have been using them every day, and I think they're great. They don't break as easily as some of the other ones, but I also like Super Pike. So those are my 2 favorites. Super Pike, which Jane Redmond turned me on to, and because those are great for cutting the mild steel if you want to make your own pancake dies. But then they also work great for sterling silver. So it's also a really good blade. But these are I'm impressed by the Nano Blades so far. So good. I don't want to throw them across the room yet.
Okay. When I'm done with the ones I have, then I'll order some Nano Blades for sure.
And I used to use Antelope, which was a German saw blade, and then I did the gold laser from Rio. So I'm progressing into better blades. But I think a good blade is worth every penny.
Now, have you ever heard of the Hercules White? That's those are the ones I use. Are you not like?
I have not tried them. I've heard of them, but not tried them.
Okay, all right. I like those, but sometimes I think it's just me when I break a blade. I'm like, was that me or was that the blade?
And it could be like how you over tighten it or wasn't tight enough, and the tension.
It's the blade.
We sound like golfers now. No, we got to have a new putter. That's the putting.
Exactly.
So I want to thank you again for your time and for putting up with these technical glitches that we've had. And I'm looking forward to seeing what you create next. And you'll have to let us know about your classes that you're going to be having. And if the Florence workshop goes, I would really like to know about that, because maybe I'm going to put that on my wish list. And you all, please check out her social media pages and her online website, and hopefully soon her in-person classes in Florence. And I'll post that information in the comments section down below so that you guys can go hit those links. If you're watching this on our new YouTube channel, which is where it will be tomorrow, then smash the like button and leave me a comment, please. I'd also like for you to follow and like my other pages on Instagram and Facebook, and I share tips and techniques there in little videos. I try to do little reels that are 30 seconds long, just to give you a glimpse into the process of maybe a step of making a hinge. So if you find that helpful, it might help you see how somebody else does the same tasks that you do. And I'll post those links as well. So, excuse me. Thank you so much for attending. I really appreciate it. I am so grateful for your time. It was fascinating to hear all of the things about the sea glass. I had no idea. And learning more about Florence and making me feel so much nostalgia for my trip and how much I missed it, and really can't wait to go back. But excuse me. So I wanted to tell everybody about our next guest, which is in 2 weeks, Sue Urquhart. I always have a hard time pronouncing last names, of Lulubug Jewelry. I've known her for a really long time, known her work. She was one of my customers when I used to have Whole Lot of Whimsy, and she makes amazing, fascinating jewelry, and you should go check out her stories on Instagram. So it's under Lulubug Jewelry. She'll be my next guest in 2 weeks. So I hope to see everybody back then. And thank you for sticking it out if you did with us after the glitch with the loss of Zoom. Zoom is so fabulous during wind and snow and all sorts of interesting weather and patterns. And with school and businesses open, it's really hard to have a Zoom call not have an issue. So thank you for your patience. I really appreciate it. And thank you so much, Monica. I'm grateful.
Thank you. Such a pleasure. I enjoyed it. Thank you.